Hey everybody, it's me again, Matt. I'm back. Never know how to start these videos. Well, I am so excited for you to be running on the trails around Zion. These are my trails. These are the trails in my backyard. These are the ones that I run on, that I bleed on, that I trip on occasion. This area that you're going to be looking at from several different viewpoints is my favorite. I've worked the land. I've worked in Zion National Park as a ranger. I've worked for the DNR, Division of Natural Resources, catching and measuring fish in the Virgin River that you'll be looking at from above, if you can spot it. Um, Man, these trails hold a super special place for me. Um, Honestly, who I am as a man, a father, a husband, I, I, I can say that who I am is because of what you're going to be running on and looking at for your Zion run. Um, they almost hold up. I don't want to sound corny, but like a spiritual, maybe, place to me. Some of my most treasured moments happened on these trails, and so I'm excited, and I hope that you guys can um, feel kind of how I feel towards these trails. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about the Zion and what you're going to be looking at tomorrow or on your Zion run. Okay. Zion is a term that has lots of different meanings. Bob Marley sang of Zion, and it was a physical place for the Rastafarians to gather. Neo in the Matrix, I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, I miss Matt Anderson, Mr. Anderson, in the Matrix, Zion was the place where they escaped from the robot alien things, whatever those things were. The Zion that we're talking about, Zion National Park, came from an ancient biblical term that meant a place of safety, a place of sanctuary. And the way that it got its name in southern Utah, we have to dive in just a little bit of a local religion. Utah was obviously first lived in by indigenous peoples like the Paiute, the Ute, the Navajo. But the naming of Zion came from a religious group, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons. And to understand why a man would name Zion, Zion, because it was a pretty important term for them, word, we have to dive in just a little bit of their history. So the Mormons were forced from their homes in several places, and there's lots of reasons for that. And so a man named Isaac B. Hunan with his family was forced across the Great Plains. They crossed it a lot of risk to themselves, took months. And when they arrived, they didn't know exactly what they were going to find. But eventually, Isaac B. Hunan and his family settled in what is now Zion Canyon in Zion National Park, near where the Zion Lodge is today. So the story goes that when he got here, he looked around, and you can just imagine that if you've been in Zion, I want you to think of the first time you saw the cliffs. And he said, a man can worship God among these great cathedrals as well as he can in any man-made church. This is Zion. So to him, he'd found his place of sanctuary in Zion, and that's how it got its name. Now, the leader of the Mormons, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at the time in Utah, was a man named Brigham Young. He heard that settlers pioneers had started to call a place Zion Canyon. He wanted to see it. You have to realize that at the time, traveling was not easy. So you can imagine him traveling through the desert, fighting the heat and the dust and the wind and the sun beating down on you. He gets in Zion, looks around, isn't impressed, and he says, brethren, this is actually not Zion. And some of his more literal-minded followers began calling it not Zion. So, you know the Behunans? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't they live up in Not Zion Canyon? Okay. So what made the cliffs of Zion or Not Zion? Well, it's a process that took millions of years. At one point, this entire area was underwater, and the sediment underneath that water created a layer. Well, the water receded, and then you had another event where we had these massive rivers come in depositing soil. And then those rivers disappeared, and then you had more water. And at one point, you had these massive sand dunes that rivaled in size anything that exists today. And all these layers just kept getting stacked one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another over a period of millions of years until at some point, because of internal forces, plate tectonics, this entire area, the Colorado Plateau, was forced into the atmosphere, exposing all these different layers. The biggest layer that you can see is the Navajo sandstone. And the Navajo sandstone consists of thick layers of cross-bedded sandstone formed by wind-blown sand dunes in a vast aged desert during the Jurassic period. This, like I said, this sand desert, these sand dunes, is the largest known sand dune deserts in the history of our planet and covered the entire Colorado Plateau. A couple pictures of what you're going to be looking at on your run. Photographer tip: the way you get a picture like this is you have yourself or whoever go stand out on one of the ledges on Wire Mesa. You go back a couple hundred yards, and then you zoom way in. This was on my iPhone, I believe. And then you zoom way in on that person, and it kind of sucks the sandstone cliffs in and makes them look very close. Pro tip. And you can see that this is the Navajo sandstone that I was talking about. You'll be seeing it all over Wire Mesa. My second favorite layer is actually the Moenkopi Formation. The Moenkopi was a muddy floodplains during the Triassic period, and it was formed by layers of mud. The color is determined by the mineral in the mud layers. You're going to be running on the Chinle Trail, on the Chinle Formation on top of that. And the Chinle is famous for petrified wood. So I want you on your run, you will actually see some petrified wood. So find it, tag Ultra Adventures, actually tag Grand Circle Trailfest, tag our Trailfest account. And in your stories, I will actually reshare those if you find some petrified wood on your Zion run. Now, petrified wood is a rock, okay? Last year I gave this challenge and people are taking pictures of like legit just dead wood. Okay, this is a rock and it looks like in the picture where you can still see you can see the tree shape. You can see sometimes the rings. You can see it looks like bark. It's petrified bark, okay? It's a petrified tree. Some of the things that you will see on your run: West Temple, named by John Wesley Powell. John Wesley Powell has a very important role in mapping the desert Southwest. John Wesley Powell is famous for being the first that we know of, first person to raft the entire Grand Canyon. He was a one-armed Civil War general, badass. I love him. He's one of my heroes. So yeah, he named West Temple. He gave Zion its first name, which was Moonkooptuweep, which was a Paiute word for straight canyon. That was actually the name of the national monument at first, and then when it became a national park, it was changed to Zion National Park. You're going to be seeing Mount Kinasava, a Paiute god who controlled the actions of deer. According to his moods, he rolled rocks off of high cliffs, and sometimes he pulled pranks, lighting fires high up on top of inaccessible places. The Paiutes thought he used the fires to send smoke signals to their enemies, informing them of the Paiutes' location. You might see some ephedra. We call this Brigham tea, but it is from the ephedra, the same ephedra plant or herb that you've probably heard of. This is a tea that the pioneers used. When I was growing up, I didn't drink a lot. Obviously, we don't drink tea as kids, right? Little kids in general. So, but I knew that this was used, so we had no idea how to make tea. So we just put it in water and let it sit there for a little bit and drink it, and didn't really work. It just tasted kind of weird. Didn't use sugar or anything like that. But you should see some on your run. You will see from several locations Pine Valley Mountain, which is one of the largest laccoliths in North America, or even maybe in the world. A laccolith is basically a magma pimple that never erupted. So we had magma underneath the surface that forced this mountain into the air, and it never popped. An important person to know is Frederick Dellenbaugh. And Frederick Dellenbaugh, he was part of the John Wesley Powell expedition, but he was also a painter and a writer. He visited Zion Canyon. He painted these magnificent paintings. He went back to the World Fair in Chicago. He produced his paintings. He even wrote about Zion National Park. And really, because of his writings, he helped share the beauty of Zion. People did not believe that anything could look like this back east. And I'm going to share a quote he said. Just give me 1 sec to pull it up. Okay, let me pause this. Okay, here, I have the quote pulled up right now. He said, "One hardly knows just how to think of it. Never before has such a naked mountain of rock entered into our minds. Without a shred of disguise, its transcendent form rises preeminent. There is almost nothing to compare to it. Niagara has the beauty of energy, the Grand Canyon of immensity, the Yellowstone of singularity, the Yosemite of altitude, the ocean of power, this great temple of eternity." Now, I've always loved that quote. I had it actually in the next slide. Didn't have to pull it up. Didn't even know that. Anyway, I hope that you enjoy your run at Zion. I hope that you, like me, find Zion. You find a place of sanctuary, of safety, a personal Zion. And I hope that you don't find what Brigham Young found in not Zion. Thank you. And I'll be back one more time with a little recording about Antelope Canyon and that area, and Horseshoe Bend.